What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
I feel like we just did this. If we sound the
fucker.
same, it's because we are doing it again. No, we pre-record because we're gonna be gone and all these things. Anyways, this is why it gets awkward because we just recorded, so we have nothing new to talk about at all.
Same guest stars.
Same guest stars. The two pups are in here still. And Olive is still in the babysitting kennel because we're leaving. Again, you're going to hear this not even close to when we're actually gone. Anyway, so again, there's nothing really going on to talk about.
After this episode, you guys will hear about our trip.
Yeah, after this episode, hopefully we'll
be back at that point.
Yep. But for now, enjoy your New Year's. Because that's where we be at.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy your New Year's. But we'll just get right into this episode if y'all are okay. So what are we talking about? We are talking about 1986. 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian's body is discovered in the woods. And this happens in Tacoma, Washington. Ooh. Which, for those of you that don't remember, we are located in Washington. No, we are not in Tacoma. However, we frequented Tacoma a lot.
Yeah, when I used to play softball, we there.
Did a lot of tournaments out in that area.
Almost every weekend.
Yeah, so we're very familiar with the Tacoma area.
Very familiar with the area.
So there's not a ton of background, as per fucking usual. It's very hard for me to do.
That's like 2 back-to-back.
Well, and it's really hard because all of the serial killers that I do on Fatal Blend, there's always background. There's always like something to say.
That's because they're a serial killer. They care more about their fucking background.
It's very much true. So
when you kill somebody one time, it could be an accident. It could be premeditated. But when you're a serial killer, that's a little different.
But okay, so in this scenario, in this actual episode, I wish we had background information because it's kind of like you wonder. You just fucking wonder, and you'll get it. Just here we go. What I can tell you is that Robert Washburn was born in the late 1950s. I don't even have his fucking actual birthday. Like, that's how little of information there was. But he was born in the late 1950s. By all the accounts of anything that's anybody's ever talked about, they think that he had a relatively normal childhood. There's nothing to talk about other than the fact that his father had owned an auto body shop in Tacoma, Washington, and that he went to Wilson High School. And he graduated in 1977. That's like there was nothing, no bad childhood stuff, no abuse reports, no neglect reports. He was raised, he lived his life. In 1979, he gets married, and this marriage lasts for like 6 years. They divorced for undisclosed reasons. It didn't fucking work out, period. Then in 1990, he finds and meets a woman named Cindy, and they also get married. Now, they have a daughter, and during all this time, he's actually working for Boeing as a mechanic. But something happens sometime in the late 1990s because Robert ends up moving out and away from the Tacoma area, and he moves to Burlington, Washington. And then in 2000, he claims, or he files bankruptcy. He no longer has his job. He basically loses everything. And then in the late 2000s, he moves all the way across the United States to Eureka, Illinois. And he lives there in a small apartment with his daughter. So the daughter from his previous marriage. Mm-hmm. Now, his daughter is a special needs child and needs special care and attention. And so he literally doesn't work, and he dedicates his life to just raising and taking care of his daughter with special needs. That does not sound like a murderer.
Yeah.
Right? Overall, he took really good care of his daughter, and he kept to himself. He was quiet. He was nice. His neighbors described him, that were in Illinois, described him as a compassionate and kind man. One neighbor was like, he even like helped me fix my car. Like, he kept to himself for the most part. They did wonder, though. There was a few things that were weird. He never let anybody come to his house after 4:30 at night. Like, he wouldn't even open his door. They thought it was where they had cameras, that there was a bunch of cameras around the house. But his explanation for those was, nope, I had cameras so I could see if somebody was trying to break in my house. And he had a vehicle, and he kept his vehicle covered with a tarp like most of the time. But I don't find that very weird.
I'll say the tarp thing I don't find
I
really
was
weird
just going to say, maybe that's a
time.
Tacoma, maybe that's a Washington thing.
Well, you think about it, it rains.
That's what I was going to say is in our area, our weather changes so much that one day it's raining, the next day it could be fucking snowing, and then the next day it's like hot as shit outside.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm wondering if the tarp thing, because I mean, pretty much any city I've ever been to in Washington, which I've been to a lot, there's
and even
always
some Oregon ones like that are close to Washington.
You always see them, either they have carports or they have tents or they have tarps covering the car. So he might have just been covering his car because that's just what he
honestly
does.
Yeah, it didn't make me think twice.
No, I feel the same way. So maybe it's a Washingtonian thing. I don't know.
I guess.
So that's all I can tell you. That's literally all I can tell you about him. Okay. But overall, you get this idea that he's like, okay, whatever. He's just a
stand-up guy.
Dude. Right. So we're going to just talk for a hot minute about the murder. So 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian decides to ride her bike in Point Defiance Park in Tacoma. Now, this bike is new. It's a brand new bike, and she's kind of testing it out. She's 13, and in the fucking 80s and 86, that's what you do. Like, y'all just fucking go. When I in 86, I was fucking 5 years old, for God's sakes.
I was not a thought.
I was not living in Washington, though. But when I was like 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, I was out all the time. Like
You guys were raised with the street light is
absolutely
what tells you to come home. Yep. Whereas like when I was raised, like the beginning, I'd say probably like up until about 5th grade, that was my life. And then it's like after 5th grade, it's like times had changed.
Yeah.
People got fucking weird. So then it was like, you didn't do that anymore.
And there were no cell phones. So like for us, if the street lights came on, that's dinner time. Or like where I grew up, my neighborhood, we all played together, and my mom would just yell out the door.
Right.
And then we'd go home, or my friends would be told, oh, it's dinner time, and we'd head home. Right. Like that. It's just weird. So for me, her riding her bike at 13 years old by herself in a park is not weird. Right. Like at all. Now she ends up disappearing, and her family has literally no idea where she went. Now this happens on August 4th, 1986. The police and they have volunteers decide they're going to search the park because that was the last place that they knew she was going with this bike. They searched the park for weeks.
How big is this fucking
park? I was
park?
just going to say, I don't know Point Defiance Park, but my guess is...
I've heard of it.
I have too. I feel like I have too. But my guess is there's...
It's probably like the old softball fields.
Well, it might be. You might have played softball there. But it sounds like there were some woods.
Like how there's some parks that... Like the one by our house where it's the park, but then there's those woods that like meet
farther
up with
back.
that park.
That's kind of what my thought process is.
That would make sense as to why they had such a long time.
So they searched for weeks and there is literally no sign of her. Oddly enough, 5 months earlier, another girl had actually gone missing as well. And her name was Michelle Welch. Now she was also out riding her bike when she went missing. And during this time, so during the time that Jennifer goes missing, Barbara Leonard, who is Michelle's mother, actually visited with Jennifer's mom. Patty, who is Jennifer's mom, was very appreciative of Barbara coming around because, again, it had only been 5 months since her daughter went missing. And they found her daughter's body. So for her, she's like, wow, how nice of her to come and like console me. However, I am pretty sure my daughter has not met the same fate that her daughter has. So like, I appreciate it, but
back the fuck up at the same time.
Yeah, like in her brain, she's kind of like, but my daughter's not.
Like, don't forget, we still don't have a body.
Right. So then on August 28th, 1986. So again, remember, she disappeared August 4th. So this is 24 days later.
Okay.
Jennifer's body is found in the woods. Her body is hidden beneath some brush. It shows that she had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death.
Jesus.
Her bike was also found not too far from her body. This was also covered with branches and leaves. So whoever did this and most definitely
hid it.
Now, her mother said, I have my fairy tale. I have my fairy tale, I think, and I'll just live with it. She said this is what her idea is of what happened to her daughter. She said she was riding her bike. The monster came out of the woods, grabbed her, and killed her. More than that, I can't wrap my brain around. So she does it, which I don't blame her.
That's sick.
You don't want to think about what potentially anything that could have happened to your daughter. Was she alive for a long time? Was she not? Was it instantly? Was it not? Did she suffer? You don't want to think about that. She's just like, my brain basically says this fucking monster took her and killed her. Period. That's all I want to know. Fair. I'd be the same way probably. What?
I feel like you'd want to know more to find the motherfucker who did it and then do the same thing, if not worse.
Listen.
In case you guys haven't realized, Trisha's a little crazy.
What I might do is I might try to find a way to get into the jail if I have to, like commit a crime to get in the jail to meet the guy. That might be my thing. Might be. Anyways, so as you can imagine, at this time, this completely changes the Tacoma area because again, it's 1986. Kids are out riding their bikes all the time. They're out having fun with their friends, and all of a sudden now, children are no longer to go about freely, because everybody's afraid. They're not allowed to ride their bikes by themselves. They're not allowed to just hang out. There's no cell phones, so you can't send your kid out with a phone and be like, hey, call me when you get there. So now parents are like taking their kids from one place to another. And when it's dark, your kids are in before dark and you've already seen them and you've been watching them the whole time. Like this changes that area a lot because it's like 2 girls in 5 months go missing riding bikes. Both have now been found murdered. Obviously, this is connected somehow. So for years, the police they investigate, they follow. What?
I'm just thinking, wouldn't this mark him as a serial killer?
Can you let me tell the story? If you would be patient.
Okay,
thank you. So for years, police were investigating it. I mean, they would get leads and they'd follow up on it. Nothing came of any of the leads they ever had. And so the case actually goes cold. They have no idea who could have done this. They have no idea who killed Michelle. But what they do know is they're pretty sure that they are probably related because they are even though they weren't murdered the same way, it's too coincidental for them not to be, right? Well, fast forward to I don't even know when she actually started, but this woman named Lindsay Wade, she ends up becoming a detective for the Tacoma PD. And she becomes a cold case detective. So this girl actually was 11 years old when Jennifer disappeared. So she was a kid. She was very close to Jennifer's age, actually. Mm-hmm. And she even talked about how growing up, that totally there were times where I'd be going from my friend's house. I'd be walking home and I'm freaked out and I'm trying to hurry because I'm looking around oh my God, this could happen to me type thing. So she goes on.
Well, especially when you're that age, you're so close to that age, it makes it even fucking worse.
Yep. So when she becomes a cold case detective, she ends up finding, this case and they're working on it. They're looking at it. So she decides she's going to start digging into it because she's like, I would like to know. I mean, I was a kid when this happened. I lived in Tacoma. I want to figure this out. So when she starts looking through all this information, she realizes that part of the issue is they had a list of 2,300 fucking potential suspects.
Gosh, that's a fucking lot.
I know. I'm like, why? What? So they had a list of 2,300 potential suspects. So what she does, she starts looking over the 2 girls' missing cases, and she discovers that DNA had actually been found in Michelle, which is awful. Mm-hmm. And so she was right there. She's like, okay, well, let's use that DNA to try to find her killer. And maybe that will kind of lead us to something with Jennifer, but at least we might be able to find a DNA match for Michelle. And then she's looking deeper at Jennifer's case. There's no DNA found. And she's like, okay. But then she's like, just for shits and gigs, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send her swimming suit that Jennifer was wearing. I'm going to send that out to see if there's any sort of DNA or anything we can find on that because technology has increased tenfold since they first collected evidence. Mm-hmm. Well, they find a semen sample in the swimsuit. And so now she's got DNA for Jennifer as well. So now she's fucking awesome. So what's the first thing you do? You send both of those samples to the lab and say, tell me that these match. Right. So now I know it's one person. So the working theory is that these 2 girls are kidnapped and basically sexually assaulted and killed by the same person. And she had already started to narrow down the 2,300 people to pedophiles in particular who might have slipped through the cracks of the law for a while. So she's already working this case because it makes it makes the most sense. So the results come back and she's shocked as shit to find that the DNA samples do not match. So that's why he's not a serial killer because he didn't do it.
Jesus.
So they don't match, which also floors pretty much anybody who knows about these cases because they're this is too fucking weird. How does 2 people like this exist in this Tacoma area? This now verifies that there are 2 piece of shit people in the same area committing literally the same crimes. in that time. Because remember, this is
They're
like
basically one's a copycat.
kind of. And you know what? Now that you say that, holy fuck, my gosh, holy shit. You might be right. You might fucking, I didn't even think about that. Just wait. You might fucking be right. Because I've been trying to figure this damn case out. And you might have just cracked this motherfucker. I am not even playing right now. Holy shit.
Call me detective, bitch.
Holy shit. Like that shit you just gut me. Like honest to God. Oh my God. That good observation. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
Not a copycat.
Clearly. So first thing they obviously do is they input the DNA samples into CODIS. Because again, remember, this is now years later. She was 11 when this happened, and she's now a full-blown detective. So she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s at this point. So it's been a while. So they put the DNA samples into CODIS. Nothing comes up, which is always a bummer because that means it's probably not a pedophile.
Right.
Because their DNA would be in the CODIS. Which
like on one hand makes it worse because you're like, it's just another one of those
You're exactly
motherfuckers.
right.
But on the other hand,
else.
it's also kind of like, well, at least they're not reoffending.
Yeah, it's kind of shitty. So obviously, as time goes on, technology continues to get better and they continue to work this case. And they end up using public genealogy as they do now. More importantly, they use public genealogy websites to see if there are any matches. And they do this based off the DNA. So they basically contact these genealogy sites and say, this is the DNA sample. And the only thing the genealogy people can do is say, well, there's some familiar matches to these.
That's what they did with the Brian Koberger
and
one.
they say to these names. Like they, at this time, they were only willing to release the last names of people who might have that kind of whatever.
Because with the Brian Koberger one, they found the dad.
Right.
Through the genealogy, which is how they found Brian.
Right. So they do that. And then they also, in 2016, they used a lab that's called Parabon Nano Labs. This is really fucking, it's interesting. So what they do at this lab is they take the DNA samples and they create sketches of suspects based on their genetic characteristics and traits. So they did that. And they took these sketches to the public and said, do these people look familiar to any of you? Nothing. Nobody hits, nothing. So
well, it's also not like Tacoma's tiny. Like
no, but no, it's not. So
although I guess 2016.
No,
I'm like Tacoma's not hello. That we were there,
bitch. We were playing softball there. What the fuck? I didn't even think about that. They were they were literally investigating this while we were playing softball. I mean, we weren't, but you were. I say we.
We were probably there when they were doing it.
Oh my gosh. Anyways,
my point is 2016. Like Tacoma's not
it's
small.
Big.
Like
yeah,
it's very
big.
large.
Yeah.
And surrounding Tacoma is very like it's hard to be like, oh, that's Tacoma, that's blah, blah, like.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the list was 2,300, as you remember, but through the nano labs and through genetic testing and through other types of research, they actually were able to start narrowing that down. Their list actually included a jogger who had called the police back in the day, reporting that he saw a man that he believed matched the description of Michela's killer in Point Defiance Park after she had gone missing. Okay. Now, remember, Michelle is the first girl. Mm-hmm. Well, this jogger's last name actually was one of the ones that the police had been given by the genealogy website as a potential DNA match. So now they're like, okay, that's somebody who's a suspect. They actually end up tracking down a total of 160 men from this list, and they get voluntary DNA samples from every single one of them to basically knock them out, right? Literally, all of them had been sent in. There was only 18 samples that had remained, and this is both for Michela and Jennifer, and there was never a match out of 160 men. And so Robert Washburn also happened to be the name of the jogger who had called the police about Michela's killer. Now that's why I'm like, fuck, could it be a copycat? So so Robert Washburn is the one who called the cops, and he literally called them and said, hey, I know that there's like, you guys are looking for like a specific person, and I just saw this guy. He matches literally to a T the description of who you think could be the potential killer or whatever of Michela. And I'm in the park right now. I'm in Defiance Point Park. And this was months before this had nothing to do with Jennifer. It was months before he killed Jennifer. So this was like freshly after Michela had been killed. Okay. So he's calling the cops, telling them he saw somebody that he thinks is the one that whatever. So they
hold on. We've been talking about so many people. Robert Washburn's the guy that worked.
He's the main guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
You said that, and I was like, because we've been saying Michelle and Jennifer so much. So I was like, who the fuck is?
I will clarify. Robert Washburn's who we're talking about.
Okay.
Robert Washburn is the one who is accused of killing Jennifer. He is now cleared of killing Michelle because the DNA.
So it makes
does
sense
not
why
match.
you were saying, "Oh my God, copycat," because
Yes.
he saw
He basically
that,
saw,
and then
yes. Okay. So now they end up arresting Robert. Remember, he moved to Illinois with his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up arresting Robert in Illinois. And by the way, they did get a DNA sample from him. They went to Illinois. He was one of their suspects. Why? Because his last name matched the genealogy of something, right? So they go and they ask him, and he voluntarily gives them a DNA sample. And it comes out that it matches Jennifer's. So they arrest him and they bring him back to Washington. And by the way,
I wonder if he didn't think about it. Because
I mean, think of how long it was. This is what one was that? 2018. You got to think about 2018. This happened in 1986.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, he probably, I mean, I'm sure he remembers everything.
I'm sure.
But on top of that, like you were saying, I mean, if he hasn't committed another crime, he probably doesn't know how severe, like, or not severe, but like how well the DNA and genealogy and all that is now. So he probably was like, oh, it's not the same type of DNA.
Right.
I'm good.
Well, and here's the other thing I was going to tell you, and I forgot to say it. So in 2018, so remember how I said there was only 18 samples that were remaining, and there had been no matches. So in 2018, Lindsay, the detective, so remember the detective that was like searching on this?
Yeah.
She's getting ready to retire from the police department at this point, and she's very frustrated because she has spent a whole shit ton of time of her career trying to find the killer of Jennifer and Michelle. And she's very discouraged because she has sent in over 150 samples and has not gotten any sort of matches. She has 18 left. She's retiring. She's like, fuck it. She sends the last 18 and she's like, whatever. A couple of months later, because it also takes months for them to find the DNA matches. So this is taking forever.
Not like a one night thing.
No. She gets a call from the lab that's like, hey, we have one match. We have a match on your DNA case. And she's like, what? And they're like, it's a match to Jennifer. It's a man, because again, he had done the voluntary samples.
Okay.
So they're able to now
I thought you were saying the match was Jennifer, and I was like,
no,
that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, they were able to finally match. Yeah, they were able to finally match his DNA to her DNA, or to her crime, because they had taken his voluntary sample. So now they've got these matches. And so they end up arresting him, whatever. By the way, I'm not going to go too much into the detail because Michelle's case I'm probably going to end up looking into now that I know about it. But eventually there is also a DNA match for Michelle's case. And they do arrest that guy. So they actually have caught somebody for her murder as well, which is a different person than the person we're talking about. But I kind of want to save that for later because I kind of want to see what kind of research I can find on Michelle's case too. So we're not going to go into too much, but good side of it is the killers have both been caught.
Right.
Robert Washburn gets arrested, and in 2018 he gets arrested. I don't actually know if it's 2018 because I didn't write the fucking date down. It's either 2018 or 2019 he gets arrested. And he denies it at first. I don't know why I don't have this written down. He denies it at first. He actually denies it. But then I don't know what the fuck happens. Somehow, some way he ends up changing his mind and he ends up pleading guilty to killing Jennifer.
It's probably a plea deal of some fashion.
Yes, but he also did say that part of the reason he pled guilty is because when he first was arrested, he was like, I didn't do it. And then like when he's actually like being arraigned and stuff, he's like, I'm just going to say I did. Like, I'm telling you I did it. His reasoning behind it supposedly was he didn't want to have to put the family through any sort of trial. Which her family came out and said, he's totally not wrong. Like, we would have rather not gone through a trial to have to relive that shit again.
Right.
And it was because the other thing was the prosecuting attorneys had talked about death penalty for him. Right. And
we have the death penalty?
At the time we did. We don't now.
In 2018?
Yeah, we did. The death penalty was just like in 2020 or something.
Fucking didn't know that.
So that's originally what they were going for, but then the attorneys had told the family, like, if we do the death penalty, it's going to be a trial. And then they talk to him and he ends up admitting. And again, there's no trial. There is no trial, right, at all. So he is instead just, I plead guilty. I did this. So he just goes in for sentencing at that point, which saves the family from having to relive or fucking for anything, for hearing anything. Her mother has already said she just has her idea of what happened. She doesn't want to know. And so putting them on a trial, you would have to know. And that's not, I agree with that actually. So anyway, so he does plead guilty. However, he gives zero explanations as to why he killed her. Still to this day, he gives zero explanations as to why he kills her. There is no motive. They can't find one. He also does not admit to sexually assaulting her. And he also never explains why he made the phone call about Michelle as killer in the first place. The other girl. So he
then turned around and did the same
and then did the
crime.
same thing. Which now I'm sitting there,
copycat.
I'm saying, see what I mean? Now I'm like, holy shit, maybe that gave him the idea. Because again, also, let's not forget this happened in 1986 and it's the only person he killed. He went on and lived, and then remember, in 1986, he got married.
Whatever
and
happened
had
to his
children.
daughter?
His daughter is in the care of her grandmother.
Okay.
And she's an adult now, but she
still
needs to be under care.
Special needs care.
But I mean, that's the thing. This guy who took care of his daughter, who got married twice, and actually the mother of his daughter said, when I saw his face come on screen as the person that did this, I was shocked. That is not him. That's not anything he'd ever do. She said also, when they told me that he was the one who called because he was jogging, she said, that guy never jogged a day in his life. She said, I've never known him to exercise. So it's a very weird case and there's zero explanations. So much as the Tacoma Police Department actually has a thing out that if you knew him as a child or as a high schooler or whatever, to call and tell them about who he is because they want to know, because he won't say anything. He doesn't say anything. He's very quiet, keeps himself, and again, he says, yes, I killed her. That's it. So at his sentencing, so he gets brought into his sentencing and he basically just sits and stares at the ground and says nothing other than answering judges' yes or no questions. Doesn't look at the family, doesn't look at anybody, answers staring down at the ground. He did write a statement though that was read in court, and part of it did read, I am deeply sorry for the death of Jennifer. I recognize there is little that my words can do to diminish the tremendous sense of pain and loss that this crime caused to many people. Okay, so he does apologize for it, which, listen, apologies, whatever. But at the same time, I just researched a case for Fatal Blend where the murderer refuses to apologize for what he did and actually refuses to even take accountability. He tries to blame it on everybody else. So I guess an apology is okay. However, it still sucks. Also, if you were to her family actually had even said, so the first time they ever saw him was at his sentencing. And her family said, I could not believe this man that walked in. He is so old and weak. And he's like a meager individual. That is the person, that is the monster who killed my daughter, right? So Robert Washburn is actually sentenced to just a little over 26 and a half years. And he will be eligible for parole in 20 years. Which he was sentenced in 2021, I think. He was 61 at the time of his sentencing. So if you do the math, he has to be in jail for at least 20 years. So the earliest he can get out of jail, he'll be 81 years old. So he most likely will die in jail, to be honest with you. And if he does get out of jail, even if he only serves 20, he'll be 80 something years old when he gets out of jail. He is currently, at this moment, he is housed at Airway Heights Correction Center in Spokane, Washington. I'm going to sidebar this real quick. I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm going to sidebar this shit. I, in high school, had fucking friends that literally were housed in Airway Heights Correction Center. I'm just throwing that out there. So I'm very familiar with that prison. Anyways, and Jennifer's mom. Okay, so here's the thing.
Okay, so you guys know how I look them up every time, see what they look like, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's an article on there that says that, granted, it's just the headline because we're talking, so I'm not going to read it, but it basically said that her daughter, so I'm assuming that's in regards to Jennifer, her daughter, 12 years old, would go over to his house and play with his special needs daughter.
Right. So no, that has nothing to do with Jennifer. So that was actually the neighbor in Illinois.
Okay.
So when they were talking to,
like I said, I didn't click on it, so I didn't know what girl it said.
No, it's fine. It's good that you bring that up because it's showing what kind of a person I guess he was. Mm-hmm. So these people in Illinois that knew him knew he had a daughter. He was friendly with all of them, friendly enough that one of his neighbors, her daughter, would go over to his house like all the time and play with his special needs daughter. And she trusted him. So can you imagine the fear she had when she found out that he had killed a 13-year-old girl in 1986? But again, this is why his background and this is why the fact that he so doesn't want to speak is so crazy, because what would cause you to murder a 13-year-old girl in 1986? Yeah, so this is why his background would be really nice to know, because literally he's in his late 20s and that's when he chooses to sexually assault and kill a 13-year-old girl, but then never kills another child, never sexually assaults another child, raises his own daughter, and has a 12-year-old girl come to his house all the time with no...
The sexual assault thing doesn't make sense to me, but it makes me wonder if the killing was maybe accidental.
So
not that it's okay at all, but...
So here's the thing. This is what I'm saying. So because you brought up the copycat thing, I'm sitting here going, oh shit, this is why that makes sense to me. Because what if he witnessed either the whole thing, a piece of it?
I wonder if they're connected, the two of them.
No, they don't know each other. That I know there's no connections. And also, by the way, the family, Jennifer's family said they've never seen him before in their life. So like, it's not even that. However, he also lived 3 miles from the park that this all happened in. So my thought is, did he witness the Michelle attack? And then after it happened, did it trigger something in him where he's like, oh, that kind of seemed cool? And then when he actually did it, he was like, oh, that wasn't nearly as cool as I thought it was going to be. I don't fucking know. But it is weird because I saw pictures of him and he does just look like a fucking meager ass old man. There is no part of him that's scary enough for you to think that he'd actually like do this, right? Regardless. This is one of those stories that something good has come out of it. And I know that's really weird to say. However, Jennifer's mom and Michelle's mom, after, this happened, they actually used the loss of their daughters to do good. And they continue to fight still. Actually, Jennifer's mom worked with the police department, the cold case police department. She worked with the police department during this time when they're trying to figure out who this was. And she was very helpful. She would do anything they needed because what else is she going to do? Find a fucking daughter's killer is what she's doing. But she's doing it the right way. Not the way I would. She's doing it the right way.
I know.
So what do? Well, just recently, I think this was actually in this might have been like 2020. I didn't actually have the dates, but they were advocating and they helped a bill pass in Washington state. What this bill does, first of all, it expands DNA collecting, which means they can have the ability to collect more people's DNA. And it ensures that the data that they collect gets into the National Registry right away, which is important because anytime
it's important for cross-referencing with other states and
now,
cases.
in this particular case, I wouldn't say that would have helped right away because they weren't in the National Registry for any reason. However, look at how many years it took for them to go through the 160 DNA catches, right? DNA references. And so if you can get the DNA to go in faster, that would be helpful. Now this law passed. And it is actually called Jennifer and Michelle's Law.
Aww.
So again, not very often does good things come out. But what I think is really amazing is these two women took this loss, which is atrocious as fuck. And they were like, we're not going to let this happen to other people. We're going to save other people. And we're going to make sure that if something like this happens, if that person has because again, my honest opinion, and I know people disagree and that's fine. Again, these are opinions. My personal opinion is that if you go into jail, you should have your DNA taken. That just should be part of you. That's part of what you get. And I know people are annoyed.
Well, you do fingerprints.
You do. And people get mad because they're like, but that's privacy. I don't give a shit. You lost your privacy the minute you did something that put you in jail. So I think every person who goes to jail should have to give their DNA. And if I'm being super honest, I have no problem. You can put my DNA in the National Registry right now because I know I'm not going to be killing nobody.
Right.
So I don't have an issue with that. My thing is the only people I feel like have an issue giving DNA are people who think they're going to potentially do something bad, right?
Or have done something bad and
don't want it to get caught.
with it.
Exactly. So it's like one of those things where I'm like, I think DNA is very useful.
It makes me wonder how many of those cold cases will or would have been solved.
It's annoying because it takes so long for them to connect the DNA. But yeah, there's always cases that are solved. Or shit, what about the people who are exonerated because DNA doesn't match? Which has happened many times too, where somebody's like on death row and then they finally are able to process this DNA and it's like, oh, that's not a match. So no, I think there should be priorities, obviously. But regardless, what they did for just the state of Washington, though, is huge, because that means if somebody gets even just sexually assaulted, if you get that DNA immediately taken and immediately put into the National Registry, you might actually be able to catch somebody before they hurt somebody else.
Right.
So what they did was they took that loss and they turned it into a positive. And I don't know how they did that, because I'm assuming they're just way better people than I am. Because not that I don't care about other people, but I think I'd be so blinded by like revenge that I don't know, man. I don't know what I would do, but anyway, so yes, that is the story of Robert Washburn, who killed a 13-year-old girl in Tacoma, Washington in 1986. And that's it. That's all I got. So my personal opinion on this is I'm so confused on it. I'm really bothered by the fact.
It's hard because he's not talking.
That's what I'm bothered by the most. Like, if you really cared,
out of respect for the family,
I was just out of the fact that you said, I'm
even
so
if they don't
sorry.
Hear it.
I'm so sorry. You don't have to make a public statement, but fucking tell the cops. Why did you do it? What pushed you to do it? Because one, you might be able to help them stop other people in the future. Two, it would put a little bit of peace of mind into people's brain to understand what would fucking possess you to do that. And also, I want to know why you called the cops about somebody. I want to know. There is that one part of me that I sit there and I go, like you said, or were you guys friends? Like, was there the two of you? Is this but again, there's no connections that can be linked, but that doesn't mean it did. That doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Right.
It doesn't mean. So it just is the most bizarre case. And that's why I want to look into Michela's case too, because I want to see what Michela's case says about the guy. Because again, he also wasn't caught until years later. I think they said it took 32 years for Washburn to get caught. So it's the same, like this guy's the same way. So you evade the police for so long, which tells me that either you didn't do it again or you did it again, but under so much radar. 32 years is a really long time to not get caught.
Yeah.
So that tells me more there's a chance that you did it once and never did it again. Why? Why don't you just save yourself and save those children and don't fucking touch them and leave them alone and let your fucking inner thoughts and your fucking intrusive shits stay inside? So anyways, that's my thought. I think Robert Washburn's in jail. I think he's definitely going to die in jail. I don't think there's any getting out because he can't for 20 years. And jail's a hard life. And so, even if you're 81 years old, you're old and decrepit by the time you get out of prison. So good looking out, buddy. Way to work it. And I will want to say one other thing in this whole scenario. I do feel bad for his daughter because her main caretaker was taken away. I don't know what kind of a disability she has, but that can be detrimental. And also, so that's the other reason why, sir, tell the truth. Because you owe your daughter the truth too as to why her main caretaker got taken away. Right. Like, just fucking be honest and tell the truth. Anyways, that's all we got for today. If you like to hear us talk, if you like to hear my voice ramble, continue to listen to us. Follow us on all of our socials so you can get the updates. And other than that, have a happy new year. And I hope you are safe. And I hope this new year coming in brings some good ass changes, because Lord knows I fucking need it. So does Sierra. Mm-hmm. We need a new goddamn year. Yeah. 2025 is the year of, well, let's just say new beginnings. Mm-hmm. Anywho, that is it. I will, I guess we'll catch you. Maybe I can't do the math, so I don't know if it's actually going to be next year or not when our next one releases, but I will catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.